My pleasure today is to introduce the keynote speaker, Ralf Helbig, to you. Thank you very much. Ralf Helbig, Dr. Ralf Helbig is from Detecon, which he'll present right now, I think, very soon. And he is talking about consulting and the importance of workflow management. So thank you very much to come here, and please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so a short introduction. So my name you know, and I'm coming now from Switzerland because I'm located now in Switzerland, Zurich at Detecon, and we came up and across S-BPM, and as I also give lectures at University Bonn, and the topic is process management, process optimization and such things. And I was very interested in this methodology, and when I saw it, I thought, okay, it's very simple, it's very easy, and then I thought of potentials. And now in my short introduction and keynote speech, I'm asking some simple questions as a researcher, but I don't have answers as a researcher because I'm also a consultant, and therefore I can give shallow answers. So therefore, I will first put up some questions, and I think you will recognize that there are some questions where the answers are quite easy, maybe not from a scientific point of view. So the question is, S-BPM, a game-changing approach. So what is the game that should be changed? What's the traditional game in business process management? So that's my first part. And then, is there a need for a new game? So that's a question. And how does the game change, if there is a need, of course? So you notice already with the agenda that I think that there is a need. And then finally, I will give you a short view on Detecon, but it will be a very short one. So I will talk about the connection S-BPM at Detecon. So first question. The future of work, is it like an assembly line? Is it working like this? So is modern manufacturing, modern work in offices, should it be designed as a manufacturing line, as an assembly line? So that's a question. If this is the case, then the sequencing of functions will be the right game. Okay, the consequence of this will be the statement, in future, human beings will not be necessary anymore in the work because we have machines. Everything can be done by machines, right? So is this the future? Do we need to work anymore? Maybe a nice future, but that's the question. The next thing, you know this guy, Charlie Chaplin, and the question is has the human being work as a machine? Yeah? I think, who likes to work as a machine? I think no one. At least I don't like it at all. I hate it. Because if anyone tells me that's the process and that you have to stick to this activity and this and that, I don't like it and I'm demotivated. I won't do it. Yeah? And I think there are many people, most people, who have this kind of feeling when they are confronted with working like a machine. And of course this film shows it pretty good. So the question is, do time change? So what was the cause of this thinking? It was because we had very standardized products that should be produced very efficiently in a huge amount of products. So that was the idea behind that, and therefore they tried to make it very efficiently and cut the task into very small pieces so that it's very clear what has to be done in the world, in the working world, in the working factory. But the world is changing, meaning the people working, they are not dumb. they are intelligent. Here we are at the university, people get knowledge, they know what to do, and therefore they are not ready to work like Charlie Chaplin in the film, yeah? Always doing only a very small piece of the whole work. They want to take up responsibility. They want to build something, to mold something, to be creative in their processes, right? So, what are the changes the world are going on? So we are acting in a global world, yeah? So it's a huge networking, yeah, global social networks. It's a global network where people are acting globally and network globally. They communicate globally, and the people themselves, they determine with whom they are going to communicate, with whom they are going to take interaction. Then you have, of course, scarcity of resources. That in this context it might not be very important, but digital vulnerability, so that's another case which is developing in the world. And you have a volatile economy, meaning the economy is changing. You have to scale up, you have to scale down, the business is going up, and it's changing all the time, it's not being stable. And also global regulations. Enterprises have to face all the time new global regulations, meaning you have to implement new things and to fulfill new requirements put forward by the governments. Then you have a demographic change, of course, and then, sorry, I have to drink some water. Thank you. My voice has still to get up, it seems. Then you have demographic change, which is also a very important trend, meaning that the requirements of the customers are changing in a while. And in future you have different requirements put forth on enterprises. Then you have urbanization. People are gathering and focusing on cities. Megacities are growing. So the interaction in megacities are different as well. Yeah? So people are very closely together and they are interacting together, and this has an impact maybe on some business like logistics where they have to build up different business models and different ways to handle, for example, goods. Electronic trade, Amazon, yeah? So for example, other companies are up in electronic trade, it's expanding. And the demands of the customers are put forth on the electronic medium, and so it's changing. Immediately it can change. In a global social network, for example, it's always on society, meaning that people and young people and all people are connected via mobile phone, and then there can come up a trend within one day, and enterprises have to answer this trend tomorrow. It's a very short time, short terms, where trends come up, where enterprises fulfill it in the next day, and then maybe the day after it's different as well. And this trend is also supported by the mass customization, meaning the people, they are not ordering a standard car, yeah, which is all, every car is looking the same, such as it was with Henry Ford in the beginning. So they want to have an individualized product, which is according to their own needs and own requirements, and where everyone can recognize, okay, that's the product of someone special, right? So then you have global wealth. That means the expectations of customers are rising all the time. So it's getting more and more difficult for enterprises to really match those rising expectations of the customers. So that's a short sketch of what's going on in the world and how the world is changing. And that's not complete, of course. That's a consultant view. But anyway, it shows a little bit of some of the important trends which are going on and which change the business dramatically. So, what could be the consequences? Employees work in an agile network, which is built up by the employees themselves. They are communicating with partners, with other people, and communicating with their environment, interacting with their environment. Therefore, the game must change. It's no longer a sequencing of functions, because it's interaction. And therefore, I like this subject-oriented business process very much, because the subject, the people, maybe even machines, web services, or whatever subjects are, they are in the center of the game. And I think that's a very intelligent and very smart way to look at processes. Because as the subject knows with whom or what they interact. And that's something where the people, I told before, okay, I don't like to be determined by a process I have to stick to in detail. Yeah? I want to determine with whom I want to interact. Yeah? Therefore, it's, for me, it does fit much better because I'm in the center, I know with whom to interact, and I know what I have to do, and I can describe it. So, another question, which is, I think, a huge problem or issue when we look at enterprises who are dealing with business process management since a long time. I think that the people designing business processes, they are intelligent people, I know, and they are located usually in the headquarters, yeah? And they don't do anything else than design processes, so they know how to design processes. But do they know how the work really goes on and how the work really functions? And I think that's something where they have an issue of accepting design processes. So Dr. Fleischmann always talks about white colors and blue colors. I like this very much because the white colors, they are at the desk sitting there and designing processes, writing down processes, but this has quite often nothing to do with the processes that are executed by the people at work. And therefore, I think it's a very important thing that the people at work are involved in process design. That's something which I have put forward in my lectures all the time, because it's a question of acceptance. Yeah. But how to do this? Yeah? It's nice to talk with them. Yeah? Is this the involvement? Or is it enough to say, okay, tell me what you are doing, yeah? And then you go back and then you design your process, and after some time you come back with a nice picture, and the guy working at the process looks at the picture, oh, it's okay, because he doesn't understand it, and he doesn't want to admit that he doesn't understand because it's some abstract picture he doesn't understand. So I think this is a very good opportunity where S-BPM comes into place, and where S-BPM really can support with new interfaces the involvement of the people acting in the processes. So what does change? And I have selected 4 areas for change where S-BPM can help to make things different and to change the game. The first thing is to close the gap. So, meaning I just talked about the gap between white colors and blue colors, and I think S-BPM can really help to close this gap. Another thing is renovation. Many companies, many enterprises are in the situation that they have a grown IT landscape, and that's a crux for many of the enterprises. So complexity is increasing. People don't know how to handle this huge IT infrastructure and IT application landscape, and they are really desperate. Yeah? Because when they want to change something, they don't know how to do it, and it costs a huge amount of money, and it's getting worse and worse. How to escape from that? And I think S-BPM can help in this matter. Business modeling, a third case. I think the world is changing very much and you cannot rest. So whenever you have developed a nice business model and you put it into place, okay, you are maybe the first, but it doesn't take a long time until the next one comes with the same business model. He's copying the business model and it doesn't take much time to copy business models. So therefore, what's the escape? You have to design another business model, or you have to adapt your business model. So you have to change your business models actually all the time, continuously, very quickly, very fast. And that's an ability which most of the enterprises don't have yet. And the question is, how can they get this capability? And how can support S-BPM with this capability? I think there are some good ideas where S-BPM can support this. And then we have global process management. We've talked about globalization. Many enterprises are acting globally. There are hardly big enterprises which are not acting globally. And therefore they always get to the issue, how can I manage my enterprise on a global level? And how can I manage the processes on a global level? That's a very important issue, and many companies are struggling with that. And I think S-BPM can change the game in this field as well. So let us look into the 4 fields. So first we go into the close the gap. So I've put forth a process model, with the process hierarchies on the left side. That's something which has been developed at Deutsche Telekom. And you see that there are a clear definition of several process levels. So high level until to the 5th level here in this case. And the question is, okay, how far into detail I have to go in the process design? Yeah? And the white colors sometimes go down to the 7th level and define everything in detail. But the issue, and I haven't seen any company which doesn't have this issue, the issue is that the models which are coming out are nice, and it's good to understand what's happened in the company, or what should happen actually. But the people working in the company, usually they don't care so much. Or they are very angry about that, because what happens if this process is designed in the 5th level in detail? They pass it on to some system developer or some application developer, and then the application developer, he starts to work to develop the system. But usually, the definition of the process, as hard as you might work, is not that exact that the programmer really can do everything according to your needs. So he's starting to interpret. Yeah? And then he comes up with a solution after some time, after a long time of programming, he comes up with a solution, and then the people working in the process, and they look at it, and usually they say, oh, terrible, I can't work with that. What's that? What the hell is that? And then you have a huge problem. So why are costs increasing in system development in companies so much? Because of this issue. Because you go down all the way with programming, putting the planned money into the game, and then you come up with your product, and finally the customer or the user in the enterprise says, no, I can't work with this. So we have to start to correct. And that's a very cumbersome, a very expensive, and a very time-consuming activity. So therefore, the question is, how can we bring together these kind of top-down, and I think S-BPM can work with blue colors, yeah, and define processes with blue colors, bottom-up approach, this kind of bottom-up approach. Okay, so the one hypothesis could be that we say, okay, we don't need any top-down approach or top-down process modeling. I think I would say to a certain extent it's good to have a top-down view because you need to get the overview. It's like in a city planning, you have to get the whole city into your view and look, okay, where is what located? Yeah? So which building is located at which place and so on. So you have to get this kind of land map or city map. On the other hand, you have to know exactly, and the people working in the processes have to tell you and have to think about themselves how they should work and how they are working, how they are interacting with people, what they are doing themselves. And that's something you have to find out at the bottom, so with the blue colors. Yeah? And I think that's where S-BPM really helps. And then you go up and say, okay, you get a kind of landscape of the subjects interacting with each other. On the other hand, you can define, I call it somewhat domain models, process models, or value chain models, or whatever you call it. So that's a kind of domain model which I have put on the top, which is used, for example, at Deutsche Telekom. There you have all the functions which are required to run the business, classified and clustered in different domains. And within the domains, you break it down into functional components and functional capabilities. So you go down, usually down to the third level. And this is something which helps you to get a kind of overview, and then you can see, okay, how are those capabilities or processes done in detail. Yeah? That becomes important maybe even in the global management of processes. I think with, for example, with the table, as Metasonic is offering, you have a very nice interaction medium with people with the blue colors who can really model themselves and see immediately the effect on the screens, what it means when they model a special process and how it works when they really have to work with it. Yeah? Because this is sometimes a difference. But then the iterative can go forth and back and switch, and then they can optimize their process and say, okay, that's something we can work with. And this changes the game because maybe the IT department or the department which is responsible for that is no longer collecting all the information of processes from different departments and trying to set up some common view on a process, and then they put it into the IT landscape and IT development, and then something goes back finally to the departments. On the other hand, the game is changing with S-BPM, that the people themselves are working on the processes, defining the processes, and IT department is only enabling the processes, meaning they are connecting to data, and that's a different game. Responsible for the processes are the people working in the processes, is the business themselves. And I think that's a big difference. If you look now in enterprises, the people working in the process, they say, okay, I want this and that. Then they put to the IT, and then the IT has an issue. Okay, he wants something. Okay, what does he want really? So then they try to find out and think hard. Then they do something, bring back, and it doesn't fit. And then the business says, oh, these stupid guys, they never understand what I want. And that's something, I say, they put the monkey on others, yeah, and they don't take the monkey themselves. In this approach, the business has to take the monkey themselves. They have to take the responsibility that the process is designed efficiently as they can work. And I think that's a very important point, and that's a changing of the game. So what happens usually? I told you before already that quite often you find a waterfall model approach when implementing, for example, standard software. So people say in enterprises, for example at Deutsche Telekom, they say we have to change paradigms. The business has to follow IT. That's a new paradigm. Yeah? Very nice. Okay. Business follows IT. So business won't make money, yeah? Because they are following IT. They determine. So what is meant by this? It's meant that business has to stick to standard software, yeah? To COTS, commercial software. I think that's something, of course, you can say, because in the standard software there's a lot of experience involved, of course, because it's implemented in many companies. So the software is an asset, of course, because they know how people usually work in some of the processes. Yeah? So what can be the approach to introduce such standard software? I think it can be a good idea. And it can save money. Yeah? But what happens usually, it happens like this. The people are asked still, okay, what do you need? Yeah? What's the way, how you work? Then someone is writing a kind of business specification. Then this is translated into a technical specification. Then this is translated into a program, and then it's tested, and then it's returned to the user. And finally, what happens mostly in the companies, people are never satisfied with the standard software. And they always argue. They say, okay, that's something I really need. It's not impossible. I cannot work like this because I have a special case. Yeah? So then this discussion starts, of course, and the question is, who is the winner? It's always hard to tell. But you create a lot of tension, a lot of anger with the users, because they, in the beginning, they don't know what the game is, yeah, and what the process will be, and what the standard is actually. Everyone talks about the standard, but no one has seen ever the standard process before. Right? So that is something which is then repeated again and again. And there are several cases in enterprises where you can see that they have really got into critical situations and sometimes stopped these kinds of projects after consuming lots of millions of euro, because they were not able to finally deliver what the user and what the business needs to have. And that's time-consuming and cost-intensive. And that's something we have to escape from. And there's something to think about, some approach using S-BPM, which makes the game different. I think if you look at standard software, for example, you could state that the standard software is supporting a certain process, usually. Maybe you can configure, you have some freedom, but it's a certain process which is underlying behind the standard product. So you could actually model this kind of standard process in S-BPM and then confront the blue colors with it. It's not much work to really model this standard process, which is underlying of the standard software. And therefore, you can confront the user right in the beginning. And that makes a difference. Then the user can cry in the beginning and say, okay, that's something I cannot work with, or I need something more, and so on and so on. So you get into the discussion, into the interaction with the users, and finally you can define in a very short time what really is required by the user and which changes really have to be done in the standard software. And then, if you have this model, you can say, okay, it's accepted by the users, and they know, okay, that's something we can work with, and they can optimize, okay, their processes within the frame of the standard software. Or if you recognize it's something which is required, which is not provided by the software, then looking at the whole process model, you can optimize your software architecture. You can think about, okay, which parts are supported by a standard software, which parts I have to add something so that they can communicate. And even you can, in the introduction of the new system, you are not forced to do it with a big bang approach. You can do it step by step. So you may use in the beginning even the Metasonic tool suite, for example, as a running system. Yeah? And then afterwards you can exchange below the system and replace it step by step. So you really get much faster to exchange legacy systems and old systems infrastructure with using S-BPM. The third subject. How can we develop business models faster? This connects a little bit to something which I have shown before. So here you find also a business model, a domain model here. So this is a description of a business model. It's a canvas, business model canvas methodology, which is quite nice. So you describe certain areas of a business model. So you have some partners you have to interact with, you have key activities and so on. I don't go through all of this, but then if you have defined this variation of your business model, you have to look for the impact of this new business model to your business, onto your business. And the impact you can find out using this kind of, I always talk about heat maps, meaning you have a capability landscape of your enterprise, and look, okay, those are capabilities which I have in place just now to run my business, and the capabilities are defined without overlapping and without repetition and redundancy. And then you can see, okay, looking at this new defined business model, on which capabilities does this business model have an impact? And that's something which helps you to really focus on certain capabilities, and then you can start to plan and say, okay, what changes have to be executed in which capabilities, and how do their behavior change, meaning how do their interaction between other capabilities change. So, and then you see that I take the capabilities as a subject cluster. Yeah? So this is a kind of subject cluster. And then you can say, okay, I can look at this capability, defining and identifying what's different in the capability to serve the new business model, and what are the changes in the interactions of this subject capability with other capabilities. And then you really know what to change to get into the new business model, or to build up a new business model in your company. And I think this is an ability many companies don't have yet. Because if they start a business model, it's always a little bit vague what they have to do and how they should do it. Using S-BPM changes the game, so you can interpret capabilities as a subject cluster, and then you can look into the capability and see what's changing in the capability you have identified, and then you can get to know all the activities, and you can put forth a kind of roadmap for the transition. I think that's something you can think about, and enterprises are working a lot in architecture usually, so they invest a lot of money into enterprise architecture management because they want to have this kind of transparency. Therefore, they have these kind of top-level models quite often. And that's something you can apply, these models, and using S-BPM to really get benefit out of it, to be faster, to develop new business models, and to implement and transform into new business models. So the last one, it's empty space. The last one is the globalization of the business process management. And I think many companies are investing a lot of money to gain benefits out of a kind of centralization of processes. And this is something where global companies especially are looking to find ways how they can consolidate some of the processes, some central processes to a central process, and how can they manage it with all their different countries and sites. And this is an issue they solve in a way I just try to describe here shortly. So this should be the world, a little bit funny description. So you have a kind of headquarters here in the middle maybe, and then you have other sites surrounding the headquarter, and the sites are all interacting with each other. And you have to analyze and to find out, okay, what are the requirements of all the sites. Once I was talking with the CIO of Lufthansa Cargo, and they talked and said, okay, we have a kind of huge list of requirements of all the sites of our company. What shall I do with it? I said, okay, you did the mistake, you asked too much, and you got a kind of wish list for Christmas or something. So that's something which I think every one of us experienced, and it's a real issue, how to deal with all these different kinds of requirements, how to find out, okay, is it really a reason behind it, or is it without reason and you can simply neglect it? So they try to collect everything and to build a kind of central process which fulfills all kind of requirements. And of course you can think that takes a long time, and that takes of course a long, a complex process. Right? So they build templates, it's called. They build the templates for a process that fits to all. And then, if they have built the template, they roll it out to the sites. And they're very proud, okay, we found a template and built a template that is fulfilling all the requirements of the world. And of course, you can imagine that when they implement the templates, usually they get a lot of trouble, a lot of pushback, and some of the companies even give up and say, okay, it's not possible. Some companies which have a strong governance, they simply enforce it and say, okay, I don't ask you, just do it, and they do it. Nevertheless, even if they are successful with this, the question still is valid, I think. How much do they lose with this kind of approach? Because the sites, the decentral sites, are losing business sometimes. Because they cannot support, they are not supported with their individual business, maybe, they are required to do. So that's something which is very expensive, and you have to have a lot of upfront invest without knowing what comes out in the end. And that's something which I think is a real difficult case, because even if you have were successful with the rollout of the templates, you still have to set up a kind of governance so that you collect further the requirements of the sites, and then get it into the template and prioritize and so on. It's a huge effort still afterwards. Okay, so how could it be different? With S-BPM, how does the game change with S-BPM? Okay, so let's start. So in one spot we can start, one small spot. So it could be one subject. One person in the business could start and say, okay, I like it, I just started. And then you start to define the process with the so-called blue colors, and they implement, and then, okay, the next person with whom he is interacting, then says, oh, what are you doing? You're giving me something defined, and you're expecting something from me. Oh, that's looking nice, I continue. I also do the same thing for myself. So it's spreading. You enable the people, and it's spreading because they feel there is a support for themselves. Okay, then it spreads. Maybe you have a possibility to make it transparent. And of course, there's a good way to make it transparent in modern technology using cloud. You can put everything into the cloud. And maybe if you have a kind of domain model, you can classify and people can find, okay, if I have the same process as the one guy in the headquarters, let's look at it and see, does it help, yeah? Or is there something different? Yeah? So, with the time, you get more and more information about your processes, how they are lived by the people, right? And how they are functioning with the people. So, you put it to the cloud, you collect the information, the processes, and then you can see, okay, where are people working or doing the same process, and how are they doing it? So, they do it maybe in a different way. Then you can start to discuss with people. Then you can say, okay, you can analyze and find, okay, there could be a synergy potential for a central process. So let's look at it and talk to the people, why do they do it differently? And if you have some white collar knowledge, yeah, you can ask specifically and say, okay, is it really necessary that you do it in a different way? Wouldn't it be a good idea to do it like this? But the advantage is you don't lose any knowledge. Because the issue with the white collar is this, they think themselves, yeah? You lose the knowledge of the people of the blue colors, maybe sitting in somewhere in South Africa or something, yeah? But maybe he has a good idea and he has a good solution for the process. Yeah? So in this way, you make use of the, I always call it decentralized intelligence, yeah? Because you get to know it. And then you can moderate and see, okay, what's the best solution for your process, and where are potentials for centralizing a process, and where are things so different going that you say, okay, I don't touch it, I leave it in a decentral way, right? And this decision is hard to make with the other approach, because then you have to immediately decide, okay, this has to be central, yeah? Okay, and if you connect it to this top-down view, as a kind of sorting box there, then you can immediately recognize, okay, where are people working in the same process, and then you can compare it and analyze it and centralize those things where you have benefit from. Right? And finally, it's easier to manage because people have some kind of freedom. They can change their process if they require. They don't have to ask a lot. But you recognize when they change it, and then you can ask them afterwards, okay, why did you change it? What was the reason? Maybe it's a good idea for someone else. We can put it into the central process. Yeah? So that's something I think that really changes the game. And there are a lot of potentials I think we can make use of with using S-BPM. So this is a short comparison. I think that's something we talked about already. I don't need to go into detail here. So you have tremendous invest up front in this left area. You have low acceptance in subsidiaries. You have a high inflexibility and high efforts when changing releases, because usually the template is not a standard template. So usually to fulfill all the requirements, you can imagine that you have some special solutions built into the template. So whenever there comes a release change, you have to adapt those special areas of your template. And that's always a lot of work and risk as well. And because people in the sites are not content with this process, they start to bypass the processes. They start to build small things, yeah? The so-called shallow IT, and then they start to do things so that they gain business. Yeah? It's not a bad thing. It's something because they want to make business. Yeah? They want to create benefits for the company. So that's quite often the result of it. And on the other hand, the upfront invests are quite low. You don't have much risk. That's it. High acceptance with immediate benefits and extreme agility, yeah, because you simply can change because it's located on a subject and the subject can change without affecting the whole system, right? And then you have a high reusability of process modules. So if someone has defined the process, someone else can use it immediately. And that's something which is of great value, I think. And you also have this kind of continuous improvement process involved in applying this methodology. Okay, so the cloud, you see here a small picture. I think this, in combination with S-BPM, it fits well. In combination with S-BPM, if you use this cloud, you get a global transparency. And this enables an approach I just talked about, this global process management, because you have the information available everywhere and you can use the S-BPM in the beginning. When someone starts, a single person may start as a subject to improve his work and to make it more efficient. He can use it in a cloud. So you don't need to ask IT, that sometimes maybe IT don't like, but he can start and without investing a lot of money. And I think that's something which is very valuable for companies to get to know, okay, this is an approach that creates benefits. And on the other hand, if I continue, it creates more and more transparency how my company really works. And I tell you, many companies don't know how they work. It sounds a little bit crazy, but it's like that. So, the last point, and last 3 minutes, is about S-BPM at Detecon. So we have, together with Metasonic, we've been at CeBIT last week, and we developed also a kind of BPM, not S-BPM, BPM maturity check, so business process management maturity check, and companies can measure their maturity in regards to their implemented business process management. And of course, we have here also some, on the left side, we have some capabilities defined that are required to really get a kind of good business process management in place in the company. And of course, you can bet that the results coming out, you also have some support possibilities using S-BPM, of course. So you see that for the different capabilities, we have some maturity level, and that's something you can use. If you afterwards get the presentation, you also can start this app with the address given there. Okay, and of course the cooperation to make it complete. Detecon is a leading consultancy in the interface between business and IT. So we say we understand the business and understand the technology behind it. So having these technology roots from a telecommunication company, because we belong to Deutsche Telekom. And so therefore we try not only to give a good or develop a good concept or a good strategy for a company, but we say, okay, we develop it for you and we also accompany you until it is working and implemented. So we take the responsibility for the strategies we develop together with our partners. So we have this clear commitment and partnership approach with the customer, with the clients, and Detecon now tries really to make S-BPM to create benefits in business. Okay, I thank you very much. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much for this inspiring talk. We have time for some questions. So, are there any questions? So we have to. Well, I'm carrying this microphone around, and Mr. Helbig is getting the other one. So, questions.
Yeah, I hear.
In German or in Dutch or in English?
As you like.
Okay. I do it in English, so that maybe there are some English-speaking people. What's your experience with the IT, with this approach? Because usually you talked about the blue-collar people, you talked about what we call in German Fachabteilung. They get the responsibility, and usually I think some traditional CIOs or the traditional IT does not like that, because they say, oh, we are using Excel and Microsoft tools to go around all these problems. That's my experience, at least in the past, that when there are process issues, people start to do that. What's your experience with that? I think there maybe is a barrier to entry with this new approach.
Yeah, it might be. It's depending on the person and the thinking of the IT people and their own understanding, of course, and their role within the company. Maybe I start with a positive example, because IT quite often is in a kind of deadlock. So they have budget cuts, and the business still is asking more and more to fulfill from IT. So they have quite often the situation that business is coming with requests and they don't have money to do anything. And in one case, the CIO told me, oh, that's a great idea. I can make contact with the business unit, because they have a requirement which they put forward each year to me since 2 years, and I know that I don't have money until the next 3 years for that. So this really can help me, the CIO, to fulfill some of the requirements and create benefit for the business, and then both sides are winning. So that's a positive case, of course. The other case is, of course, the fear that they lose some control and some power. But I think that they also, it's the question how you look at it. The CIOs or the IT people, they get a chance to focus more on the data and data connecting to processes. And they also can provide services cheaper. And that's something, and with lower risk. So the approach, for example, replacing legacy systems, the IT is interested because that's the cost driver for them. Yeah? They know that's a lot of costs involved in those legacy, and if they get rid of it, then they're happy. So I think it's depending on how you communicate it to the CIOs. I think there are still benefits for the IT as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions?
Well, I have a question. I think it's a very attractive approach to allow blue-collar people to be actively involved in designing their process. However, on the other hand, processes are necessary for companies to work in some stable manner to achieve well, business results and so on. So, what would you comment on how to compromise between a constant change on the lower level and, well, some kind of desired stability in a top-down manner, which is probably usually the case?
I think this approach also can support stability by first looking at getting transparent what the people are doing and why, understanding why they are doing it, and getting the people to think about their processes themselves. I think this is an important improvement. And if you watch it, after some time they might change in the beginning a little bit, and after some time the process gets stable. Yeah? Then you say, okay, that's now a condition where the process is stable, and I really can implement something maybe which is supporting this kind of process. So I think it helps really to find out, okay, is the process stable or is it unstable? Because the people are experimenting, they are not sure what's the best way how to manage this process or how to do the things. And I think that's something you can gain with this. And once you have found out that this is a stable process, you can decide, okay, about the software architecture maybe. You might keep it like this, or you replace it by something else, and then you can enforce it on a global level and say that's the process we are doing now and it's not changing anymore. I think that's something which is helping to really find out what is the stable and best process which I want to fix for business. And on the other hand, you by modeling this, you have a documentation already, right? So that's something which is of value. and then you know how things are done and why things should be changed.
One question? Yes. So, how do you manage the interface between the overall, perhaps overall process model from level 0 to 3 to the S-BPM approach?
Yeah, that's something maybe to think through a little bit more. Yeah, I think because the idea is to really take capabilities as a subject cluster. Yeah? So that's then isolated a little bit, and that's also corresponding with this kind of service idea which is behind this domain model, which is used also to identify services in a company, right? So therefore, you can decide, okay, is this capability executed by a machine, by a computer program, or by a person, or by both? Yeah. So that's something where naturally there is some connection in between. So usually this domain model is designed and is a quite stable model. This shouldn't change all the time. Because there might be new capabilities if you have a new business model you are following, yeah? Or change capabilities. But in principle, if you don't change your business model, the capabilities are quite stable. So this is the stable model, and below, the processes could change with S-BPM. So that's something we haven't implemented yet, but I think it's a good idea, and we can discuss this.
Indeed, allocation of the processes in clouds is clear and physical idea, and it's absolutely technologically easy to be implemented. Next question is the requirements. First, it's process to be executed requires data, information, and knowledge. Data could be located, no problem. Information, structured and unstructured. Structured, easily. Unstructured, questionable. And knowledge. Key point is, how would you extract knowledges? If from the clouds, from intellectual agents being allocated, for example, in app stores, and not being binded to the processes, or being collected in a certain area of the intellectual resource bank? Question.
That's a good question. Of course, not easy to answer. Let me try to find a kind of approach. I think knowledge is always a very complicated thing. And I always look for people who are giving their knowledge freely. That's something I think enterprises like to have. That people easily give their knowledge and so that they are replaceable. Yeah? That's the idea behind it. And I think it's quite challenging to get out real knowledge out of the people in the business. And the question is, of course, what type of knowledge? I think we gain knowledge by defining the processes. So process knowledge is gained by putting it into the cloud. The algorithm logic, or some, of course, there's some more knowledge. The question is, as I have the subject and the person is always linked to, the knowledge is always linked to a person. So therefore you have the possibility to say, okay, this is a subject now which has a certain intellectual property I know, and this doesn't work without this person having this knowledge, and I can allocate this kind of knowledge where it is really required, and then I can make up my decision. Okay, is it a person who is really sharing its knowledge? And can I get out this knowledge out of the person? Yeah. Or not? Have I to look at this subject in the system and look, okay, what is it doing, and observe it maybe, yeah, and find out in this way some of this behavioral knowledge of this person. I think that I personally think it's a very challenging topic to really get out the knowledge of people into an enterprise environment. But I think with this approach, you might have the possibility to allocate the knowledge which is required in which areas, so that you at least know, okay, which parts of the subjects doesn't work without this kind of knowledge. If it comes to information, I think you have a good partner here, gold partner iQuser, where you get the possibility. It's a kind of search engine which is running in the back. And when you are working in the process or even modeling the process, it provides you with all kind of information, yeah? And data and information. And that helps you to really make up your mind, okay, is this the information I might require here or not? And I think this is also a new approach where this kind of knowledge or information is searched in the context of a process that can help me to get the right answers within my process, for example. Does this...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Doctor feels that in this case, in such approach to the knowledge, you increase uncertainty of the solution being taken.
Mm-hmm.
And you simply increase instability of the process itself. Because you create quadruple subjectivity.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Subjectivity which exists in the knowledge, you multiply with the subjectivity of the expert who are in charge of this problem.
Yes, it's right. I increase this, but therefore that's the reason why I think it's not that creating value for global company if you do not combine it with this top-down approach. So you need this, I would say, central intelligence, yeah, to steer this somewhat. Yeah? So on the one hand, you give you give the people the opportunity to steer themselves. On the other hand, you control and look at this and analyze it and see, okay, where doesn't it make sense that they control themselves? We have to get some central rules in place. And then you enforce it by that.
The exit is in the central intelligence agent.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Helbig, and thank you very much for the interesting discussion. So right now we have our coffee break. Oh yes.
Sorry. Thank you very much. We have a little gift for you for this excellent keynote, running keynote, I would say.